We live in a world dominated by numbers. More speed, more connections, more data, each promising to affirm our progress and superiority. We look back at a time before smartphones, before the internet, before the conveniences we now take for granted, and feel a quiet sense of triumph. But have we truly evolved? Do we understand ourselves better than those who came before us, or have we simply exchanged old illusions for newer, more seductive ones? More than 2,000 years ago, Socrates already questioned these easy certainties. Maybe it's time we did the same. As he wandered the streets of Athens, he asked questions, not to show off his knowledge, but to expose how little we understand about ourselves. His method, known as meutics, was like that of a midwife. It helped others bring their hidden truths to light. Today, we have access to a world of information Socrates couldn't have imagined. We can check the weather in Tokyo, read global headlines, and peek into strangers' lives, all within seconds. We hoard data like digital collectors, convinced that information equals wisdom. But when was the last time you truly asked yourself, who am I? Not what you do, where you work, or how many followers you have, but who you are at your core. Socrates believed real growth begins the moment we admit how little we know about ourselves. It's a humbling realization to see we've spent years shaping our lives around others' expectations without ever questioning if it aligns with our soul. True knowledge, he taught, doesn't come from external downloads. It arises from within, through honest questions and deep reflection, especially those quiet, internal conversations we so often avoid. But how often do we allow ourselves that silence? Or do we fill every moment with distractions that pull us away from the questions that matter? Our ancestors built temples that stood for centuries. We build apps that are obsolete in months. They pass stories down through generations. We post content that vanishes in 24 hours. Yet we're convinced we're more advanced. Technology has become our new religion. Every device, update, and innovation feels like a step toward perfection. But Socrates would ask, perfection in what? In which direction are we evolving? Picture someone on the subway, endlessly scrolling through apps, avoiding eye contact. In their hands is a tool of unimaginable power, something ancient kings would envy. Yet they can't connect, even with themselves. Their fears are timeless. Loneliness, the search for meaning, the need to be loved. Despite our modern tools, we remain fragile and uncertain, still haunted by the same questions. The difference now is we have more ways to avoid them. More noise, more distraction, more escape routes. Socrates might argue we haven't evolved. We've just become better at deceiving ourselves. We've built a high-tech version of Plato's cave, where the shadows are in 4K and streamed at lightning speed. Know thyself was carved into the Temple of Delphi. Socrates made it the heart of his philosophy. But how can we know ourselves when we spend our lives playing roles? At work, we're the diligent employee. Online, the idealized persona. At home, the perfect partner or parent. We live in a state of constant performance. Every post is curated, every photo calculated, every interaction potentially strategic. We've become directors, writers, and stars of a carefully produced version of our lives. One designed to please an invisible, ever-demanding audience. Socrates spoke about arete virtue as excellence of being. Not excellence of appearance, not excellence of performance, but excellence of the soul. It was about being whole, authentic, aligned with your deepest values. Today, we confuse with personal branding. How many times have you felt exhausted, not by what you did, but by what you had to seem? That meeting, where you smiled and agreed with things that contradicted your convictions. That dinner, where you played a version of yourself that even you don't recognize. That post, where you sold a happiness you didn't feel. True evolution would begin when we had the courage to take off the masks. When we could say, "I don't know, I'm confused, I need help," without fear of disappointing someone. When we could simply be human with all our contradictions and fragilities. But this would require a silent revolution, the courage to be authentic in a world that rewards performance. Socrates had a declared enemy, the sophists. These were the influences of ancient Greece, eloquent men who knew how to use words to convince anyone of anything. They sold the illusion that rhetoric was wisdom, that speaking well was synonymous with thinking well. Today, sophists are everywhere on social media. Everyone has a formed opinion about everything: politics, economics, relationships, life philosophy. No matter how complex the subject, there's always someone ready to give their definitive version in 280 characters. The speed of opinion has replaced the slowness of reflection. Socrates spent hours, sometimes days, exploring a single question. He asked questions, listened to answers, asked more questions, admitted confusion, went back to the beginning. For him, wisdom wasn't having ready answers, but knowing how to ask the right questions. It was a slow process, sometimes frustrating, always humble. Today, intellectual humility is seen as weakness. Saying, "I don't know," is almost a social crime. Changing opinion is seen as inconsistency, not as growth. We've become a civilization of instant experts, all competing to see who shouts their version of truth the loudest. But Socrates would ask, where is true dialogue? The kind that transforms both speaker and listener. Where are the conversations that make us leave, different from how we entered? We've replaced dialogue with discussion. The joint search for truth with the defense of fixed positions. The illusion of evolution manifests here, crui. We have access to more information than any previous generation, but perhaps we are less wise. We confuse volume with depth, speed with wisdom, opinion with knowledge. Socrates would say that evolving would be recovering the art of not knowing and the courage to admit it publicly. I don't have time. If Socrates could hear this phrase repeated thousands of times a day, he would be fascinated. How did a species that invented machines to save time become so enslaved by it? How do beings who created devices to connect us instantly feel more isolated than ever? Progress sold us a seductive lie that life is a race against time, and whoever can do more things in less time wins. We optimize everything. Meals become quick snacks. Conversations become voice messages. Relationships become casual encounters arranged by app. Everything needs to be efficient, productive, measurable. But Socrates taught exactly the opposite. He would stop in the middle of the street, remain motionless for hours, lost in deep thoughts. His disciples would find him planted in the same place, contemplating a question, chewing on an idea. For him, time wasn't something to be saved, but something to be fully inhabited. When did you last stop to truly contemplate something? Not take a photo to post, not consume content, but simply be present with an experience. Watch the sunset, have a conversation without an agenda, walk without a specific destination. These moments have become almost revolutionary in a society addicted to speed. True evolution might be rediscovering the art of slowness, realizing that some things can't be accelerated. The growth of a true friendship, the maturation of an idea, the healing of emotional pain, the development of wisdom. Socrates would say that real progress isn't going faster, but knowing when to stop. Socrates was condemned for corrupting youth. His education was dangerous because it taught young people to question everything, including and especially established authorities. He didn't transmit ready-made information, but awakened critical capacity. He didn't domesticate minds, but freed them. Today, knowledge is literally at our fingertips, and yet many leave the educational system more confused about themselves than when they entered. The modern educational system, however well-intentioned, often functions like a production line. Input curious and questioning child process. Years of standardization, memorization, and conformity to norms. Output functional adult, but often disconnected from their creative and critical essence. Are we educating to liberate or to conform? Are we teaching people to think for themselves or to repeat what's expected? Are we forming complete human beings or just efficient professionals? True Socratic education would begin with a dangerous question: who are you when no one is watching? It would investigate not just what you know, but why you believe what you know. Not just what you want to be, but who you really are underneath all social expectations. Educational evolution would be creating spaces where people could discover themselves, not just inform themselves, where they could question, not just accept, where they could make mistakes, not just get things right, where they could be authentic, not just approved. For Socrates, there was only one truly important task in life: caring for the soul. Not the soul in the traditional religious sense, but the deepest essence of the human being. That which makes us unique, that connects us with meaning, that allows us to experience love, beauty, transcendence. Our civilization has specialized in caring for everything except the soul. We have gyms for the body, therapists for the mind, consultants for career. But where are the spaces dedicated to caring for the soul? Where do we learn to deal with existential emptiness, with the search for meaning, with questions that have no answers? Material progress has given us comfort, but not peace. We have bigger houses, but smaller families. We have more entertainment, but less genuine joy. We have more physical security, but more existential anxiety. We've optimized everything except our capacity to be happy. Socrates would say we forgot the essential along the way, that our soul is atrophied like a muscle we don't use, that we developed our capacity to have, but lost our capacity to be, that we evolved technologically, but regressed spiritually. Caring for the soul doesn't require complicated techniques or esoteric knowledge. It requires time, silence, honesty with oneself. It requires moments of contemplation, deep conversations, experiences that connect us with something greater than ourselves. It requires the courage to ask questions that don't have easy answers. True evolution would be one that included the soul in the project, that measured progress not just by GDP or technological innovations, but by the quality of human relationships, by the capacity to find meaning, by the wisdom to live well. There's a type of tiredness that doesn't go away with rest. It's that deep exhaustion many feel in maturity when they look back and ask themselves, was this really what I wanted from life? It's the tiredness of someone who ran a lot, but in the wrong direction, of someone who succeeded at the wrong game. Socrates would recognize this symptom immediately. It's what happens when we live misaligned with our essential nature. When we follow happiness recipes that weren't made for us. When we pursue goals that satisfy everyone except our soul. Imagine a person who works at something that doesn't inspire them but pays the bills, lives in a place that doesn't connect them with nature but is well low, maintains relationships that don't nourish them but are socially adequate, accumulates achievements that don't fulfill them but impress others. And then comes that moment of brutal honesty. Why am I so empty inside? This existential tiredness is paradoxically a sign of spiritual health. It's your soul screaming that something is wrong, that you're betraying yourself, that you need to stop and reevaluate everything. Socrates would say, it's your inner wisdom trying to wake you from a dream that isn't yours. Modern society offers superficial solutions to this deep tiredness. More entertainment, more consumption, more distractions. But Socrates knew that the cure for a sick soul doesn't come from outside. It comes from within through self-knowledge. The courage to make difficult changes, the decision to live according to your most authentic values. Evolving would be stopping being afraid of this tiredness and starting to see it as a guide. It would be stopping fighting against your inner wisdom and starting to listen to it. It would be having the courage to disappoint others so as not to disappoint yourself. We've never had so many options. You can choose between hundreds of TV channels, thousands of movies, dozens of cereal brands. You can live anywhere, work remotely, date people from any part of the world. Modern freedom is measured by the quantity of available choices. But Socrates would ask, do more options mean more freedom or just more ways to get lost? He saw freedom not as absence of limits, but as mastery over oneself. Not as having many choices, but as knowing how to choose. Well, observe the paradox of modern choice. The more options we have, the more anxious we become. We spend more time deciding between alternatives than enjoying our decisions. We live in constant fear of missing something better, of not having chosen the right option, of not maximizing our possibilities. True Socratic freedom would begin with a different question. What really matters to me? Not what should matter, not what matters to others, but what genuinely resonates with your soul. From there, many choices become irrelevant. When you know who you are and what you want, decisions become simpler. Socrates was free because he knew how to say no. No to money that would corrupt his soul. No to pleasures that would take him away from virtue. No to opinions that betrayed his convictions. His freedom came from inner discipline, not from absence of limits. Evolving would be rediscovering this authentic freedom. It would be stopping being a slave to infinite possibilities and becoming master of conscious choices. It would be trading the tyranny of options for the wisdom of voluntary simplicity. Change is the watchword of modern times. We change cities seeking a new beginning. We change jobs hoping for more satisfaction. We change relationships looking for perfect happiness. We change our look, home decoration, lifestyle. We are a generation in constant movement, but Socrates would make a crucial distinction. There's a difference between change and transformation. Change is external. Transformation is internal. Change alters circumstances. Transformation alters consciousness. Change can be done quickly. Transformation takes time and requires deep self-knowledge. You can change countries, but take your fears along. You can change partners, but repeat the same relationship patterns. You can change careers, but maintain the same neurotic relationship with work. External change without internal transformation is like changing the decoration of a house with structural problems. Socrates knew that the fundamental problems of human existence aren't solved with geographical or circumstantial changes. They're solved with the slow and courageous work of looking inward, understanding our patterns, questioning our beliefs, confronting our fears. True transformation is revolutionary precisely because it's silent. It happens in the intimacy of consciousness, away from public eyes without fanfare or publicity. It's the moment when you finally understand why you always choose the same type of person to relate to. It's when you recognize the self-sabotage pattern you repeat in all areas of life. Evolving would be stopping running from ourselves through external changes and starting to transform internally. It would be understanding that the problems that follow us wherever we go are inside us. And that's exactly where these questions need to be answered, within. But in a world overflowing with noise, silence has become almost unreachable. We're surrounded by a constant stream of traffic, notifications, conversations, music, screens, and racing thoughts. Even in solitude, our minds stay crowded with opinions, worries, to-do lists, and imaginary arguments. Socrates understood the power of silence, not as the mere absence of sound, but as full presence. A kind of stillness where we stop reacting and start existing, where we stop doing and start being, where we stop thinking about life and finally begin to live it. In true silence, the masks fall away. There's no need to perform, no one to impress. Borrowed beliefs, lose their grip. What remains is what's real, you, unfiltered, unedited, free from external expectations. In that sacred space, your authentic self can finally emerge. But modern life fears silence. We avoid it at all costs, drowning every moment in activity and distraction, as if we were terrified of what we might find underneath it all. Maybe nothing? But Socrates would say the opposite, that in silence we discover everything that truly matters. It's in the quiet that wisdom whispers its deepest truths. It's in the pause that life actually unfolds. Real evolution begins when we dare to be still with ourselves. When we shut off the devices, the noise, the constant stream of outside voices, and simply be. Because silence isn't empty. It's full of possibility. If Socrates could see us today, he might smile with his familiar irony. After more than 2 millennia, we're still wrestling with the same core questions. Who are we? What is a good life? What truly matters? The tools may have changed, but the human drama hasn't. True progress isn't in faster tech or smarter machines. It lies in our ability to ask better questions, to live more honestly, and to care for the soul as deeply as we care for the body. Wisdom isn't about collecting answers. It's about learning to live peacefully with life's deepest questions. If you're feeling the pull to break away from borrowed ideas, to live more consciously and authentically, take a look at the exclusive material here on the channel. Think for Yourself is a direct, practical guide with exercises designed to help you break free from mental noise, sharpen your critical thinking, and take back control of your life. Check it out in the first pinned comment. And if this message resonates with you, don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned for the next video.